Hello and welcome back. Sorry this video has been so long in the making, but I'm glad to get back to this. So today I'll be tackling the third round of this Bob Ross painting. You might remember from the last video I tackled this particular scene by following along with Bob Ross's video. I did both an oil painting and then I followed it again and did a digital painting, and I tried very hard to not only follow Bob Ross's video but use the techniques that he put forth. And this one's going to be a little bit different. So the goal of this piece was to just use the finished painting as a reference point, which you can see off to the side there, and then really just approach it in my own way. So you can see I've at this point set up a file with a base color on the very bottom, and then I put another layer above that with a light source, and then above that I have the sketch at a really low opacity, and now I'm laying in some of the details I'm using my favorite brush, which is the Kyle T Webster gouache alternate brush. So it's a little bit different from the real media oil brushes that I was using previously. And I wanted to deviate from those because I found that they were really destructive when it came to laying in details, meaning that they didn't really preserve any opacity. Once you make a brush stroke, it was going to mess up a lot of your late layering effects, I guess is what I mean to say. Whereas with this brush, like, it plays really nice with opacity, it layers really well, you don't have to like make a bunch of extra layers if you don't want to, it just does really well with brush sensitivity. So already I've changed a few things. One of the major things I think that I changed was moving the horizon line, which I didn't really care for in Bob's original piece. And at the very end, you'll see across the three paintings that I did, the horizon line got gradually higher. And that, I think, looking at Bob's piece, I feel like the focus is kind of odd. It doesn't really have a strong focus, and I didn't really care for that because it gave kind of a passive voice to the painting, and it even came off as a little spooky, and maybe that's just me, but I didn't really care for it. I really wanted this piece to be more lighthearted, more what I would want out of seeing this kind of nature scene. So by raising the horizon line, I gave a stronger focus to the waterfall and just made it a little bit more active and a little bit more present in the piece. I really like how the detail ended up with the brush on the left side, and that was kind of accidental in a lot of ways. I wasn't really sure what I was doing, and I was experimenting a lot with how I wanted those brush strokes to fall, and they just fell really nice. So you'll kind of see I go back to that quite a bit throughout the piece, just trying to figure out exactly what I did so I can replicate it on the other side. I've also widened the trees a little bit, made them a little bit more stout. No particular reason there, that's just how it happened. And I think I mentioned in the last video, I was going to talk about how differently I approach the water, and that kind of goes back to the same thing I mentioned before with the oil brushes in Photoshop being a little too destructive when it comes to laying in colors. And that was really where I deviated in this piece. By using the gouache brush, I was able to really keep the water gestural. Water is one of those things that it's a little bit like a rite of passage for artists. If you can paint or draw water really well, you're cool. And it takes a lot of practice, and in a lot of ways I feel like it takes a little bit of luck. So the few things that I really tried to pay attention to with this was how would the reflections of the trees fall on the water? How would that affect the color? So you can see towards the center of the stream there, I tried to keep it a little bit more shaded, a little bit darker and a little greener, because that's where the trees are. And then where the stream comes to the foreground, I kept it a little lighter. So that was a little bit how I approached it in a different way. And another thing I really tried to pay attention to in this piece as a whole was the geometry, I guess you could say, of the landscape. I would definitely say landscapes aren't my forte by any stretch of the imagination. So this was really good practice, for sure. And by geometry, I really mean like I clumped out different sections of the landscape, and you can kind of see on the left side I've started to do that by separating areas into kind of these soft mounds. It allows you to build plants and grass and other landscape features around that shape, which it just gives the area a little bit more personality and a little bit more depth. And one of the biggest inspirations for me throughout this particular piece, I've been following a artist on Twitter. I think his name is Justin Donaldson, and he's been doing these really awesome landscape paintings. I think he does them all in gouache. I guess you could kind of compare them to a Studio Ghibli type of style. They're really fantastical. They have great color space. He keeps the plants looking just impressionistic enough to be realistic, but a little bit whimsical. And I was really using that for inspiration in this piece. It's a life goal. I want to be able to paint like that so bad. So at this point, like, I'm really starting to go back in and just tighten up some of the areas. I will admit I am procrastinating a little bit because I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to finish up the area closest to the bottom, so the foreground. And that bush on the right was also a sticking point. It seemed like no matter how hard I tried and no matter how many times I repainted it and put different contrasts in the background and changed the colors, like it did not want to conform to any particular shape. So I was pretty frustrated with that. Finally it settled down, but ooh boy. And one of the things, like, so I actually put this dead tree in really soon. One of the benefits to utilizing the digital medium is that I could. So I put it on its own layer, and I turned it off for the most part until it was time for it to be in frame. But I wanted to definitely keep that in the picture, since it was really a defining piece of Bob Ross's version. As you can see, I'm going back and forth on that bush now. I think part of the problem was I failed to really lay in the brushy area around those trees first, and I was really kind of holding the bottom of the bush a little too precious, and that's just a bad mix. I needed to sacrifice either one or the other in order to get that sorted out. I guess one of the other things that was really different from Bob's original piece is that a lot of what Bob does in his paintings is really just a lot of clever brushwork. which is where the fan brush comes in, is where the palette knives come in. They do like one specific texture, and those tools do those textures very well. And that's how Bob does a lot of like leaves and bark details. And once you build that visual library, it's really easy to just duplicate it. And I with how I work, it's a different vocabulary, I guess you could say. And I don't paint in the same style that he does. He does a lot of alla prima work, which it means a first attempt. So he paints everything wet on wet. There's no underpainting. He just lays in finished color right from the get-go. And of course, if you've seen the show, he does it all in 30 minutes. So it's even like an accelerated alla prima. And I work largely by underpaintings. I do a lot of sketch work. I utilize line. And you can see some of that, like especially on the left side where I've started blocking in the landscape at the bottom. I've used just a little bit of line to delineate that space, while at the same time keeping it a little less detailed, because I really want the focus to be on the waterfall. At this point, I'm really finishing it up. So you can see I laid in some textures on top, and I really liked that purple. It's quite a departure from the original color palette, but I liked it a lot. And I thought that it gave it a little bit of extra lightness. And then I added, a little bit of particle effects on top. Like I was really just adding some extra jazz in there, I guess you could say. But that about wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed. I actually have a little bit of an announcement. I got a present, you guys. Check out this totally rad 3D print of me and my cat that one of my patrons made. Thank you so much, Renee. It absolutely made my day. You even turned her head into a whole strawberry. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Stick around for the next video. At this point, I'm not entirely sure what that'll be. But keep an eye on my social media. You can find links to all of that below. And I will see you next time. Bye.